Ever raced through a track in Mario Kart 8 and seen something interesting and wondered, how much am I missing when I race through these tracks? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. Sometimes, some of these tracks are a little more donut plains than others. But here we go, one cool hidden detail from each base game Mario Kart 8 Deluxe track. First off is the classic Mario Kart Stadium. The theme of this track revolves around competing racing teams, and they even go as far as to give them their own vehicles and clubhouses. In the next track, Water Park, you can find some neat posters inside this building. The most ridiculously detailed being this Mecha Cheap layout, detailing as much as its serial number. Next, in Sweet Sweet Canyon, we've got some interesting Princess Orange branding on these bottles, which is a brand name you can spot across several other tracks in this game. Now for the last track in the Mushroom Cup, Thwomp Ruins. The really impressive thing here is the sheer amount of Thwomp references. Even the base of these pillars are Thwomp shaped. Moving on to the Flower Cup, we've got Mario Circuit. Amongst the numerous fun details at the start line, the coolest has to be this hatch on the roof of this building. But this is just lame compared to literally anything in the next track, Toad Harbor. It's not easy to just pick one detail here, but I think my favorite is this little stone ship above the tunnel entrance. Let's check out Twisted Mansion now, which has one of this game's most ridiculously faint details. If you go way up to this clock, you'll see a little tiny power star engraved at the top. And we've got something similar here in Shy Guy Falls, with this little Shy Guy face on the start gate. Well, that's all for the Flower Cup. Let's move on to Sunshine Airport and the Star Cup. If you look closely at these signs, they actually have information about flights to other tracks, and even the abbreviated names of the fictional Mario Kart flight companies. That's hard to follow up. Let's see what Dolphin Shoals has got. Well, nothing it turns out, unless you never realize that these rocks look like dolphins. Things get slightly more interesting in Electrodome though, with a couple of brand names for the groups that put this track together. And rounding off the Star Cup, we've got Mount Wario. The hidden detail that stands out in this track are the numerous doors and rooms placed on walls that are literally behind you while you're racing, so you'll never see them. The Special Cup starts out with Cloud Top Cruise, a mostly underwhelming track when it comes to the little details. But I think the work that went into the props on the Bowser ship is pretty great. Next is something a little more interesting in Bone Dry Dunes. If you look closely at these pots, you'll see some neat retro Mario level designs. And on this yellow tarp, you'll see the original sun enemy thing guy boss attack object. Moving on, we've got Bowser's Castle, in which my favorite detail is the fact that these locks on the prison cells have horns on them. Rainbow Road is the next track, and it's a bit glitchy here on NoClip. But don't let that detract from the fact that this space station is positioned directly over Italy, a fun reference to the character Mario from the video game Super Mario Bros. Now we'll check out the Shell Cup, which starts out in Moo Moo Meadows, and they've gone as far as to put the name of the track on this wheelbarrow here. And if you thought that was boring, you should see the next track, GBA Mario Circuit. It's got almost nothing in the cool department, but if you look closely, you can actually see a little chalkboard turned leaderboard, where we can see those team names from MK Stadium again. And over in Cheap Cheap Beach, they've got some more tiny branding on the beach gear and even on this boat. And lastly for the Shell Cup, N64 Toad's Turnpike, which has this 64 MHz sign, a probable reference to the N64 that this track originated on. Oh, and if you're ever driving somewhere and you see this sign, you should probably find a safe place to turn around. Come to think of it, this mystery mark in all lanes sign isn't very reassuring either. After that is the Banana Cup, starting with Dry Dry Desert. Although the details aren't plentiful, there are some really cool Mario themed hieroglyphs you can find. After that is Donut Plains 3. After that is Royal Raceway. If you look closely behind the audience here, you can see a few blurry little pictures of the track. And in DK Jungle, there's all kinds of Donkey Kong imagery on this temple. Now over on the Leaf Cup, there's something pretty interesting in Wario Stadium. If you look closely at the mud, you can actually see Wario's face. Yeah, I didn't find anything interesting here. But over in Sherbet Land, you can see a couple ice castles next to the track. This is just another case of a very good looking track without many hidden details. But in Music Park, you can see that the start gate is made out of guitar stuff. And in Yoshi Valley, I'm just gonna pull a Dolphin Shoals and point out the rock that looks like Yoshi's head. Well, that's the end of the Leaf Cup. Easily the worst so far when it comes to inconsequential details that nobody ever noticed nor cared to look for. Luckily, the Lightning Cup has a little more wasted artistry and labor, starting with Tick-Tock Clock. For this detail, you're gonna have to look outside of the track. Here you'll see a star, a leaf, and a flower on the walls of the clock. The next detail is a little more subtle, but still interesting. Way down in this big room of Piranha Plant Slide, there's actually a little ladder on the wall. The next in Grumble Volcano is even more subtle. It's this Morton construction sign, but the implication that this is the company that built these concrete parts through this cave is still pretty cool. After that comes N64 Rainbow Road, which is mostly known for this city below. But if you look out in the water, you can see this statue statue, which suggests that this track takes place very close to Toad Harbor, where the statue is also visible. Starting with Yoshi Circuit and the Egg Cup, we're actually not going to pick any of these countless awesome details next to the road. In fact, you've got to look off of the island for this one. Way off in the water appears to be none other than Daisy Cruiser, a cruise ship track from Double Dash. Next, in Excite Bike Arena, if you look over and out of the arena itself, you can see none other than some random basic city. Luckily, Dragon Driftway is a bit more interesting. If you look very closely, you'll find Mario Bros imagery popping up all over this track. Next, we'll check out Mute City, which almost feels overly detailed, but I love that they put a yellow mystery mark on some of these buildings instead of helipads. And in the Triforce Cup, we've got some pretty cool Wario's Gold Mine details, like the W's on the roofs of these buildings. And I sorta doubt that these W-shaped supports are accidental. While SNES Rainbow Road isn't the most complicated track ever, you may have missed these little toad houses on the ground. Next, in Ice Ice Outpost, I really like the logo on this boat. It says Toad Polar Expedition 2014 to 2016, or maybe that's 2015, or actually it looks like 2316. Regardless, I also noticed this crate hanging above it, which bears the same construction logo as the one in Grumble Volcano. And over in Hyrule Circuit, you can see the Legend of Zelda element symbols in the church windows. Well, that's it for the Triforce Cup. Now we've got the Crossing Cup. The first track, Baby Park, is full of great details that go largely unnoticed. But my favorite part of this amusement park has got to be this little gift shop, complete with this sign full of nonsense. Cheeseland is slightly less interesting, but you may have missed these slices of pizza out in the cheese desert, which actually have little mushroom houses as pepperonis. A little less wacky and cheese-focused is Wild Woods. While I love the intricate pathways in the tree section, I gotta point out this little chopping log next to the houses. And in the Animal Crossing track, we've got this guy hiding in a plant. I would say Crossing Cup was pretty good. Let's check out the final racing cup, the Bell Cup. This cup starts with Neo Bowser City, and if you look off in the distance, you can see this awesome factory building thing. After that is an extremely detailed track, Ribbon Road. I think this movie poster is my favorite hidden detail here. Not only is it a Kung Fu Panda reference, it's also supposed to be a movie about the Dragon Driftway track. Next is the second to last track and possibly the most detailed Mario Kart track of all time, Super Bell Subway. Among the dozens and dozens of intricacies and callbacks, the most interesting has gotta be this map here that depicts the city beneath N64 Rainbow Road, and it even confirms that Toad Harbor is indeed on that city's coast. It also names the location of Moo Moo Meadows nearby, as well as a whole bunch of businesses within the city. And the final Mario Kart 8 Deluxe base game track, Big Blue. In the huge ship where you start the race, if you look over, you'll see these little dock rooms with ships in them. And you know what, that is all the racetracks, but let's also check out the battle courses too. Starting with Battle Stadium. This stage has got a duality theme between Mario and Bowser. They've even gone as far as to put a Mario Kart being repaired on the Mario side and a Bowser Kart on the Bowser side. Next is Sweet Sweet Kingdom, which has a reference to the fictional bakery that's responsible for this stage. After that is Dragon Palace, where at the very top of this temple is a Cheep Cheep. And over in Lunar Colony, we can see the logo for the Rainbow Exploration Agency that put this stage together, and whose name is a reference to Rainbow Road. Next up is Woohoo Town, where my favorite detail is this bowling alley building. The next stage is Luigi's Mansion, which has these little boos on the doors. It's a little bit lame, but things only get worse when you go to SNES Battle Course 1. The only interesting thing about this stage is the weird retro-style scoreboard. And finally, Urchin Underpass. This stage is super fun to explore for hidden details, and one of the most subtle is the fact that each of these manhole covers has a squid on it. Well, there's one hidden detail from each base game Mario Kart 8 Deluxe track. If you thought those were some hidden details, you should see the Booster Course Pass. Apparently, they just said screw it and decided to hide all the details. They hid them so well, in fact, I can't seem to find any of them. I don't know, maybe I'll do a video on the best detail work in the BCP, since there are a few good tracks in there. Anyways, I hope you discovered some new details to notice as you race through these tracks or play these battle courses. Maybe it'll inspire you to look a little more closely to these tiny details the developers add to their games. Well, I hope you enjoyed. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.